let's explore an alternate timeline, an alternate version of reality. This is based and inspired by a comment I received in real time just a little while ago. I made a video called Hair Loss Drama. You're making this harder than it needs to be. And ultimately, the reference there is that I make it so simple to predict if you're gonna go bald. You ask yourself 5 questions and you do best out of 5. It's really that simple. How old are you now compared to age 35, the year that pretty much you're gonna go bald or not by? Look at a photo of yourself at age 1. That's a projection of your hair at age 35. Number 3, how is your hair now? How much hair do you have left now as far as balding goes? Number 4, could you grow a full connected beard by age 18 or not? If so, you're more likely to go bald. And lastly, if you're predominantly of Asian or Native American descent, then the chances of you going bald are much less. So you look at those 5 things, you get the best out of 5, and that will overall determine whether you go bald. For example, I had a strike against me on the beard one because I could grow a full connected beard by age 18. Yet I'm 39 and here's my hair. But overall, see, that's really simple. But people make it harder than it needs to be. People continue to tell me about their father being bald or not, their grandfather being bald or not, hair in the shower, hair in the pillows, their temples, all these things that I never mentioned that were important. It's simple, it's 5 things. So I made a video pointing that out. People are making this harder than it needs to be. It's drama is what it is. It's drama. So our friend Tobo, who has returned, he's climbing the mountain of wisdom. He's finding me at the top, and perhaps he could enroll as my mentor once again, because I'm liking what Tobo has to say. It's a long comment. I'm gonna put on my glasses, because keep in mind, in real life, I would look like this, but I don't want glares on the camera. So that's why I typically don't wear my glasses on here. Here we go. He says, the deposed golden boy has returned. I just watched your response to my comment, and yeah, Aziz's response was pretty much perfect. I wasn't factoring in the health aspect of going to the gym. Instead, I was thinking of your stereotypical gym bro. Truth be told, I was always on the fence between keeping your hair versus letting it go. I watched a lot of different channels, including yours, Bald Cafe, etc. Not hairliciously though. Then you mentioned Kevin Mann, who ultimately turned the tide for me. That said, you two have quite a lot in common. Both hair loss YouTubers, both gym goers, both just shy of 40 years old. Here's another thing we had in common. For 5.5 years, I was a vegan. Apparently, Kevin Mann is currently still a vegan. But he had much more aggressive hair loss than you did at a young age. Imagine you swap places. Do you think your hair loss views would be different if your hair loss was aggressive? Yes, I do. Like Norwood 4 by his mid-20s? Absolutely, yes, I do. Conversely, do you think he'd have your attitude if his hair was as mild as yours? End quote. I think he would not. I think he would still do what he's doing, because I think that people who care about their hair, if they were in a Norwood 2.5 situation with thinning on top, they would at least be triggered to finasteride, hair transplant, whatever it is. They would still be triggered because it's still close enough to balding that it's going to trigger them. But I really do like to explore this concept as far as basically if things were reversed. If I would have aggressively been balding in my mid-20s, which I wasn't, I was Norwood 2 at age 24, but it wasn't until age 30 that I started getting more into the 2.5 and had any thinning really noticeable that I could even see. So I spent, the first 30 years of my life without ever really even noticing anything. So what I have to do to answer your question is I have to travel back in time to college, because when I was 21, I shaved my head for the first time. I think it was like a number 2 or number 3 guard that all the guys in my dorm, we did that. And I loved it. It was so freeing. I'd never done that before. So by doing that, it gave me an idea of what it would be like if I didn't have hair. And I think a seed was planted in my mind right then. Ultimately, if I went bald, it wouldn't be the worst thing. And I already assumed I would be balding by my early to mid 30s. I always thought that about myself. So at the same time, I remember telling my roommate in college, man, when I'm a dad and I'm married, I'm not going to be the guy who's going to be in his 30s or pushing 40 going bald, I'm going to get a hair transplant. And that's what I said it as a 21-year-old who knew how freeing it was just to shave your head if you're going bald, but also didn't want to be balding years from then, which I'm in those years. To my surprise, I have all my hair. I mean, for all practical purposes. So it is interesting to see how that all played out. I think ultimately though, because I felt so comfortable with shaving my head, that put me in a situation where I just can't imagine ever being like Kevin Mann or people like that. And I recently made the video talking about why it is that men age 35 and older typically are not watching my videos. They're not leaving comments. And it's because typically men who are going to get married before the age of 35. I was 27. Back in 2008 when I got married, that was the average age for an American man to be married. It was age 27, which is exactly the age I was when I got married. My wife was 26, which is the exact age a woman in 2008 was getting married. So, I mean, by the book, I got married at the quote right age or whatever. And that's nearly 12 years ago. So, as far as me being able to understand the mentality of someone who cares about keeping their hair or thinking that their physical looks matter, I can't relate to that. But I do think it's interesting, and I published this other video a little bit earlier just to kind of feel this out. I wanted to prepare for this video. So I published 4 videos on yesterday in real time, making the video why the fear of hair loss doesn't bother most men over the age of 35 like me. So I have Fat Lazy Cat who had said, haha, so true. I'm 37, no wife or kids, LOL. Yes, I have the high school mentality. He goes on to leave this very detailed comment, basically agreeing with me that it kind of seems a little bit silly on his end to be focused so much on his looks, but ultimately, and I like what he said here, he says basically that you don't have to try to impress. Oh, here it is. It's actually Carl Davis, the next guy. He said, you have a very good point there, Nick. I'm 32. I'm single, no kids. I've always looking at my hair. I think it's because I always want to look my best, but like you said, once you have kids and a wife, you're not trying to impress anyone because you already have it in front of you, end quote. So I think it is very interesting to try to imagine those two timelines, but I think ultimately Kevin Mann is the kind of person who, and he's so intelligent, his IQ must be so high. I openly talk about my IQ is not high. I have a high EQ, emotional intelligence, and understanding, figuring out people and reducing them down to what motivates them and all that. But as far as math and science and engineering and all that, I'm no good at that. That's why I'm good at talking. I make up for it in the other ways. I'm good at understanding psychology and knowing, and I just made that silly, just a few minutes ago, I made a silly video. It was a parody, obviously, which there's gonna be so many people who don't understand that it was a complete joke where I'm telling people to take finasteride and all that, where I was mocking the concept that this is really what it's about. In reality, this is how the world judges you from these things. And you can imagine, especially when you are married, especially when you're married and you're answering to this other person and you're raising kids, what are they looking for from you? Are they looking at your hair? No, in fact, my daughter, who's 4, keeps saying, Daddy, shave your hair again. That was funny. I like that. She keeps asking me to shave my head. She wants me to do that. It's funny. But just imagine if you're responsible for other people and you have that amount of responsibility placed on you and all those expectations, you become more of a man by default. But ultimately, yeah, you have to be confident. You have to respect women and help your fellow man. You have to find your identity and your unique skill set. And I guess you don't have to be healthy and active, but it definitely helps. I mean, as much sleep as you lose being a parent. So I want to do whatever I can to be healthy and active. You have to be decisive. You have to be committed. You have to have leadership skills. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be funny. And you have to be emotionally intelligent. You cannot get offended all the time. You have to be in control of your own emotions. So it is interesting. I mean, just going back to what he's asking there, I think ultimately getting married and having kids is going to help keep you from getting into that state that you keep focusing on your looks. And I can totally sympathize with people who don't get married and have kids. I can understand why you'd focus more on that. You're not forced into this list like a guy like me is forced into it. Read it there. So it makes sense. But I think the bigger question is, would I have ever been the guy who didn't get married and have kids? And the answer to that is no. I was always the guy who was going to get married and have kids. That was always important to me. By default, it was a part of my identity. It always has been. So maybe perhaps that's the bigger question. If you're someone who's even thinking, maybe I won't get married or have kids, then by default, you're more likely to be the person who is going to be more worried about your hair, because it's kind of one way or the other. You're either focusing on yourself and you have the time and energy to do that, or you have the motivation and the basic necessity to be these things instead. Your comments belong right here.